Hi, everyone. It's 7 p.m. Central Eastern Time. What that means? It means what it always means on a Tuesday. It's another Disruption Talks episode. So, last week has been crazy, and I don't believe there's a single person in the world that has an internet connection that doesn't know or hasn't heard at least GME, GameStop, AMC, or Reddit Wall Street Bets, Robinhood, or essentially how humanity figured out a way to make day trading efficient and then find themselves in a hole out of which we're trying to crawl. You've probably seen just today that we've had several market blocks, and here today joining us is Inas from Tomorrow. And what we will be discussing is actually sustainable financing and fintech that is trying to encourage solutions that don't go for wild growth just for the sake of growth and leave us in situations like the one that we're experiencing today. So, Inas, very nice to have you here.
Yeah, good evening, everyone. I'm very happy to be here.
I'm happier. Tell me, please, what's your take on all of this? What do you think when you look at the let's say that it was January, from the beginning of January until now, the responses? We're interested, of course, in the financial doing good aspect, if I may call it that, like the ethics of this whole situation.
Yeah, I think we all know that there lies a lot of power in money, right? And so money, traditionally, we said money makes the world go round, right? And I believe that in many times money makes the world go wrong, actually. And especially when big banks, traditional banks get involved, or hedge funds get involved, they have always a tendency that they somehow fuck up things. Yeah? And I think we've seen that again now in January. So I think this whole GameStop thing really, so when I looked deeper into it again, I think someone like Robinhood going out there with the aim to democratize investing, I think is something really, really, really interesting, right? But then starting to block people, their community from trading, I think, yeah, it didn't look so right to me. And then I think finding out that there is some very influential hedge funds somehow being invested in Robinhood, and also, or not directly being invested, but profiting from Robinhood by being one of their key customers, paying them money for tradings. And then looking deeper into that, that they're directly shorting, let's say, GameStop. So there is somehow a circular connection all into that. And so I think it again shows that, if you look back into the last couple of years, there is almost, there's almost no bank that hasn't stepped into any big scandal in the last couple of years. Yeah, I think so. Whether it's the Deutsche Bank here that we have in Germany that tumbled into a lot of manipulation, corruption, stuff, or whether it's bigger banks like HSBC and so on, also causing a lot of headlines. So whenever it comes to money, somehow interestingly, the tendency is always that things go wrong very quickly. And I think you also followed the case of Wirecard here in Germany. I don't know if you were aware of that, but that was our biggest financial scandal, of last year. And I think let's see what GameStop will result into, but it's definitely at the moment.
Okay, I mean, of course, disclaimer here, I am heavily loaded on GME, so of course I'm slightly biased. Judging simply by the fact that GameStop themselves haven't liquidated any shares, I'm pretty sure that we might experience this bump. So let's be in it for a ride. And for our audience who isn't up to date or perhaps needs a little bit of an explanation what happened. So essentially, hedge funds, so investment funds, agreed that they will be buying back the stock at a specific price, a short, much lower than the current price. So Reddit and Wall Street Bets, which is currently at 7 million, if not more, Redditors, they figured that out because it's public information, and they tried to set up the market to counteract that. So from going from $40 a share, we are at $300 a share. And now I think we dipped below 100 today, then we're going back to 130. So essentially not cool stuff that the fund thought that they would get away with. Couple clever people figured it out, and now the Robinhood tried to stop it, because just as you mentioned, the ethical problem here, the major ethical problem, is stopping the trading for the day-to-day users, whilst hedge funds were able to continue trading. And just like you mentioned, the fact that Robinhood and Melvin Capital are customers of each other raises another question mark. But let's do enough of GameStop and let's focus on tomorrow. So if you could tell us your personal why and the origins of tomorrow. How did it start? What is it about? And what makes you wake up every day and actually decide to continue doing tomorrow?
So yeah, before starting tomorrow, I built up a software as a service company in a completely different sector, actually. So I was involved in the helping big food companies basically make their supply chains transparent. And I set up a company. We had like roughly 100 people at the time when I was, helped to set it up for a time period of 10 years. And I was increasingly questioning, what kind of positive impact or the positive footprint that I'm leaving behind running my business. And I increasingly got involved with, sustainability topics. So I saw that, it's quite interesting to look at these big food chains and look at how the products were actually being produced. What kind of standards, did they comply with? And so my interest was really increasing on that there is some possibility to use the power of business to create some kind of positive impact. Because I think we are all aware there are so many global challenges, whether it's climate change, whether there are social issues. And so basically one day I took the decision and said, I'm gonna leave my own company after 10 years and basically start something completely different. Because I had the big belief and the big wish that I said, why can't we, combine digitization, entrepreneurial passion with the aim of doing something good for our planet? And I didn't have a clue, first of all, what it's gonna look like. Yeah. And then basically I dropped out of my own company and basically started from zero. Yeah. And what was very interesting that at that time I sold some of my shares from my previous company and thought, it would be quite cool to invest that money into my own retirement plan and help also my family, for their retirement plans, my children. And then I was looking into ways of how I can invest that money without actually threatening the future, let's say, of our planet. And it was surprisingly hard to find investment products, that you can make money for your retirement. At the same time, don't support any industries where you say they are threatening the future of our children. Things like weapons, things like fossil fuels, deforestation. There's so many things that banks get involved with, and it's quite difficult to get away from that. And so in Germany, I figured out, we have quite a couple of really interesting so-called sustainability banks. So banks that, they usually use every euro that sits on your, checking account or current account, or every euro that you invest in some kind of investment fund, and they invest in other companies. They invest it or hand it out as loans. And the question is, what are these companies, those industries? And sustainable banks, what they typically do, they hand it out to rather positive projects such as renewable energies or organic agriculture, or some companies, that really leave a positive change behind them. And I really had problems, let's say, figuring that out and investing my money there. And those, especially with the traditional banks, it's a catastrophe. And then those sustainable banks, that there are some of them, are also very old school when it comes to digitization. So to open a bank account takes really a pain. And especially in Germany, the banking landscape, when it comes to UX, usability, it's really awful. And so the idea came up, why can't we combine, great UX, great user experience with the idea of creating like a sustainable banking player that uses money to drive positive change for our world. And that was really the initial idea. And then I got together with two friends, and we basically started it. We started the journey 3 years ago. Our product is live since 2 years. And I think we have roughly above 50,000 customers now, but we are growing quite aggressively at the moment. And we are really planning to become the biggest sustainable banking player in Europe within the next few years. Definitely crossing the 1 million user line, I would say, in the next 2 to 3 years.
Fingers crossed for that, absolutely. My follow-up question was whether this decision was more driven by cold market calculation or whether it was a personal conviction, but I think we got that answer already. It was a very personal conviction. So I agree with what you say, that it's very difficult to control the entire supply chain of your purchases, right? Even though you might be buying it from the company XYZ and they might have this nice CSR program where they plant trees for every purchase that you never know what exactly happens every step of the way that they actually operate. So how does tomorrow define sustainability in products? If you could tell us customer deposits invested or lent to sustainable industries. You mentioned that you choose those industries that you don't interact with. Could you mention those? What are the massive no-nos essentially that you will never invest in as tomorrow?
Yeah, so I think there's a huge list of basically of total no-goes. So one of the big things definitely is, for example, weapons or fossil fuels or coal-based energy. Basically, I'm a big driver. Anything that's involved in deforestation, for example, and any kind of really heavily unsustainable kind of business. So that could also involve, for example, companies, that are involved in some kind of known corruption efforts, for example. And so we have quite a huge list of negative criteria where we say we don't invest in. So nuclear energy would be another, GMO would be another example, for example, for that. Yeah. Or unfair treatment of labor standards is another thing. So where we know there is a company that's treating their employees, in a very bad way, or they're not complying with common human rights standards, those are typically absolute no-goes. And it's surprising when you screen, for example, the stock markets and you try to find the good companies. It's quite shocking when you analyze these big companies, how many of those companies are really having some fundamental issues when it comes to the environment, to social standards, or government's fairness standards. And how is it that we basically define then sustainability? So first of all, we say no to a lot of things, and then we say yes to many positive things. So it could be things like renewable energies. It could be things that we support education, health, some way of sustainable mobility, for example, is something that we say yes to. So this means there are some positive criteria that we say we would really like to support these industries or these kind of companies because we believe that they really create a possible footprint. Just to give an example, what could that mean, right? So a typical oil and gas company would definitely not make it right into one of our investment criteria. On the other hand, there could be a manufacturer, for example, of insulation material, right? That's producing insulation material for buildings, to build in walls, so that the heating costs go down. And at the same time, CO2 emission goes down for heating. And at the same time, the material out of which this insulation or isolation material is produced is from recycled materials, so from shredded wood, for example. So this is a quite good example, what kind of business would qualify. Or of course, there are some very obvious things such as renewable energies, for example. Yeah. And then how do we invest? Yeah. So first of all, we have the current account. So basically, you open a bank account, you get a card, right, with us. So every single euro that sits on your current account can be used by banks. And so we basically take some money of that liquidity that's available from our customers and invest it. Yeah, for example, in projects that I just mentioned. That's one area. The other area is that every time that you pay with our card, so we have a Visa card that you can pay with, we receive a so-called interchange fee. Yeah. And this interchange fee basically is taken by the banks. Traditionally, what we do, we take that interchange fee and directly donate it into climate protection projects. So in our case, we donate that money into a forest protection project in Brazil, for example, to really reduce CO2, to protect the forest, and really create a positive impact. That's the second pillar, right? The third pillar is that we provide investment products to our customers, where they can plan their retirement, for example, with it, where we also help them to really select the companies and investment funds. So we create an investment fund that they can invest into with only hand-picked sustainable companies. And another new route, actually, that we are opening up at the moment is that we help you with your way of sustainable living. So, for example, we all have a certain lifestyle. Sometimes it's more sustainable, sometimes it's less sustainable. And for example, what we do, we use the power of technology to basically help you. Well, what does it mean? So every purchase you make with your card, so we have a pilot project going on right now. We calculate in real time the CO2 footprint of your transaction. So let's say you go and purchase a coffee at your favorite coffee store around the corner. We calculate within the app in real time what's the footprint of that particular purchase you just made. And then we tell you, well, look, that was, for example, 5 kilograms of CO2. And then we give you some ideas on how you can reduce that, or if you're not able to reduce it, we provide you ways to offset that by donating money to a climate protection project, for example. So, this is like how we approach sustainability. And at the very, very core of this is the aspect of transparency. So in our app, when you download it, there's an area called the impact board. And within that impact board, we show in real time what we do with the money, how much invested in what kind of projects, and every, let's say, purchase you made, the fraction of the purchase of the interchange fee was donated. How much is it? What's the impact you created with it?
So what I also want to ask is, who cares about this stuff? What's your user persona? What's the most common type of person that simply picks up the phone, goes on the App Store and says, this is the way I'll be doing my banking from now on, and deletes all the other apps? Who are they?
Yeah, I think that's a very, very good question. So I believe, I think the last couple of years, the whole, movement around sustainability or leading a more sustainable life was considered more like a niche phenomena, something for eco nerds, right? And increasingly, I think also with that whole movement that got started last year with, or the year before, sorry, 2019, with Fridays for Future, I guess it was also very present all over Europe and the whole world. There is a big shift, I think, towards, let's say, sustainability really becoming a new reality and a total mega trend. I can definitely share some numbers here from Germany. So here in Germany, we have around 30% of the overall population who really deeply care about sustainability. They're changing the ways they shop. So they increasingly shop organic food, for example. They're increasingly interested in either no cars, rather riding the bicycle, or in electric cars. They're increasingly consuming, for example, green electricity. So we see the numbers really going up big time. And so take the 30% of overall population in Germany. And I think if you look at all over Europe, it's definitely also a number between 20 to 30% of population, with an increasing number that care about this. And they say that 9 out of 10 people overall, especially with younger generations, they say they would rather go for a brand that is somehow purpose-driven, right? And so you can really see there is a big shift taking place. And this shift is also then, arriving within the banking industries, and people will more consciously choose their banks because they're looking for a brand that is more sustainable and purpose-driven.
So contextually, just a question in the audience appeared that is very much in parallel with what you just said. So you mentioned that over those past years, we experienced this shift. What's the response of other companies that don't do exactly what Tomorrow does as a first order of business, which is caring about sustainability? Have you seen them copy it, pick it up? Was it done successfully, or was it a failure?
So it's quite interesting, because the reason why we created Tomorrow, or why we founded Tomorrow, was really to create a shift towards a more sustainable financial world, where sustainability is considered as a key factor. And we believe that we really created some kind of buzz within the market. And we see a lot of people, whether it's smaller fintechs or small startups within Europe, that are to a certain degree copying our approaches, or at least getting inspired by our approaches, and also established players picking up the ideas, which we believe is great, because the market is so huge and the problem that we are all in is so big that it's not up to us only alone solve that sustainability issue here. No, it needs many more people, many more companies to come along that route and really shift money toward the right direction.
Okay, and sorry, but we just got another one that's also good enough to be pushed into the conversation instead of waiting for later. So if sustainability is your main USP, do you see an existential threat from other banks that are being pushed into more sustainability through regulations? Because I'm sure that there's sort of two ways that a company can go, or three ways that the company can go sustainable: by decision, like yours; by market reaction, so all my competitors are doing it, I can't afford to not do it myself; and then, of course, the regulators will say you have to fulfill a quota of ABC in order to operate as a bank. So is that a threat? Is that something that, if the bigger players that are currently in the same space as you, not so focused on sustainability, if they're forced to focus on sustainability, what happens then?
Yeah, I think we can see that already, right? So I guess you can see a lot of banks and traditional banks. If you go on their website right now, they will definitely, I think, maybe at point number 3 on their web pages tell you something about sustainability and some sustainable investing options. The problem that I see is that there is an increasing trend towards greenwashing approaches. So banks trying to label certain products at with green, and then they say they pick the most sustainable companies within oil and gas, for example. So they would find you the greenest oil and gas company or the greenest airline that invest in, and tell you, well, we know it's a sustainable fund now. And then what happens? And you as a user, you dig deeper and say, please show me what is in that fund that I'm invested in. And first of all, you will find difficulties finding what is invested there. And the second thing is, when you look into, you'll find out that there are a lot of companies that you're not aligned with. So there's this greenwashing problem where I see that, especially established players don't take it very serious. So there is some kind of commitment there, but no real execution. And the other thing is, well, there is a power of innovation, right? And especially, we're talking about tech, and tech, leverages a lot of opportunities. And I think a lot of trend is going beyond traditional banking. So I think, we talked about footprinting, offsetting, enriching transactions, and making it really easy for customers with a great experience. And that is something that is beyond the traditional ecosystem of banks, right? And so there are so many differentiation opportunities there, plus the brand. And I think if you want to build a trustworthy brand that is from A to Z really sustainable, then it's not only saying that, but living it, being transparent, sticking to your values, and also, getting a certification like B Corp, for example, where you say you incorporate the idea of purpose within your articles of incorporation, and not only serve the shareholder values, for example. I think that there is, so if you really take it serious, I think there are so many ways you can differentiate yourselves among all the others that just try to copy.
So, of course, the B Corp Club, you're in it, we're in it. What do you think unites us? And be careful, because I've got a follow-up question to this. They'll go in the opposite direction. So, once again, what do you think unites us outside of just those 5 letters and the logo?
I think what unites us is that we not only do business for business purposes, doing business to make money. I think this is the wrong way to go. Yeah, I think money is essential in order to expand your business and survive as a business and be able to innovate. But if you do that at the cost of other stakeholders, it could be your customers, it could be your employees, it could be your suppliers, it could be the environment, right? It could be the local village next door. If you don't incorporate those stakeholders, I think then we all have a problem. And I think that's what unites us. Being a B Corp, we look out of the box and we incorporate the needs of these kind of stakeholders. And we're mission and vision driven. And I think also by hosting this today, I think this shows that you definitely have an interest of sharing ideas beyond your traditional business.
Even though I'm in sales, right? So what a surprise. And my opposite way question is actually about what is the risk to companies like yours and ours? What is the risk to the sustainability trend? Because there's always going to be players like you. There's going to be players like us. You do banking in a way that's not been done before. You focus, you probably take some sort of a hit by choosing not to invest or partake in specific industries, but you do it for a reason. And Guru also, we have done several tech for good projects that also were oriented at empowering via tech some NGOs. So of course we try, but what is the biggest challenge? What might happen that would cause actually the sustainability trend to slow down?
I think there is another risk. I think there is rather a risk if we don't incorporate, let's say, other stakeholder needs and the fact that we have a climate crisis, actually. So you will see companies that don't incorporate values, that they will go out of business. And I think Wirecard was a very, very good is a very good example of last year, a company that definitely on corruption and transparency didn't, do how they should and weren't very transparent, and they went out of business. There are other examples of people, even energy providers, just as RWE, one of the biggest energy providers here or utility companies here in Germany. They didn't believe in renewable energies for quite some time. And well, they were really, their stock really, decreased heavily in market valuation. And I think we increasingly going to see these things that on the opposite, if you don't care about them, it's going to hit you. So for us, I don't see any risk, to be honest. I think if you asked me 3 years ago when we started, I would have told you not finding the right investors. Because investors, even 3 years ago, it doesn't sound that far away, right? There was a lot of convincing effort involved in telling people, hey, people are ready to switch to brands that are associated with values. Yeah, and I think we can see that now that this is not the case anymore. And I think at least the investors I talk to now, they say, no, we want to invest in that area because we need to allocate more purpose-driven money into people that solve some global challenges.
So would you agree with the quote that if you fail to embrace sustainability, you're going to embrace sustained failure?
Yeah, totally. I totally love that. Yeah, I would definitely sign that. Yeah.
Good. So before we jump into a shameless plug, both for you, I know you want to show something to the audience. I know I want to finish this off also by a small announcement. Another question. from Radek. He's saying that he's currently working on partnering with big financial institutions. What language should he speak? What is the language of value that would communicate them to choose a sustainable path?
Right. So first of all, it's a mega trend in terms of how you can. Well, people are increasingly asking for it. So especially young customers, they gonna ask for that. That's one thing. The second thing is it's not only the customers; it's also the potential employees. So a lot of employees, when they choose their employers, increasingly they're asking the employer, "Hey, what are you actually doing against the climate crisis? What are you doing for society and our planet?" So if you want to hire the best talent in the future, you need to have answers for that. And I think if you dig into numbers, you will find also there is a huge, correlation between sustainability and financial outperformance. And there's an increasing trend of people allocating their money into sustainable funds. So I think you'll find a lot of data. If you need some insights, write me on LinkedIn. I'm happy to share some data there with you as well. But there's so much evidence. And I think banks need to get out of their comfort zone and, test the waters here. Because if they don't do, I think they're going to have real challenges going forward and miss out on opportunities.
I completely agree. I know that it's already a growing trend. Prospective employees asking their prospective employers not only about sustainability, but also asking questions. What was your company's response to COVID? How did you react? Were you actually people focused? So Radek says that sharing data would be great. So I think he'll definitely reach out to you. And a follow-up question to a topic that we already mentioned. So what is your moat against those big companies? What is your protective shield against a big player, the incumbent, simply saying, we will open up a sub bank, which will be a copy of tomorrow? What is it that they can't copy?
Again, a very good question. So sustainability, if you take it really serious, is not just a thing of, relabeling your website. So it's not that easy. For example, we're about to launch our investments feature in the next couple of 2 to 3 months. And we worked very, very hard engineering actually an investment product that is really sustainable, number one, and at the same time really cost attractive. And just to give you an idea how the selection process works for picking the right investment projects and companies. So first of all, you have to go through a very rigid screening process. You have to be, set up a screening process, how you want to evaluate those companies. Then what we did, we created a so-called impact council. So we have a council totally independent from us founders and from our shareholders that have to approve every single investment. And there's a rigid process going through all of that. We do specific scientific analysis on whether a certain company meets the 2-degree goal, whether they, the industry that they're working in, whether the business model of that company is polluting the environment or is actually saving the environment in order to be compliant with the 2-degree goal that we all have set for us. So it's complicated. And then at the same time, it's about transparency and trust. So at the end of the day, it's about whether your customers are going to trust you that you're taking the topic seriously. And therefore, you need to be transparent. And if you're not consistent with your approach, customers and the media will eventually find out, right? That you're not taking it very, very seriously. And that's why I believe it's not just a thing of copying some narrative, some pictures and saying, hey, here we are. Take the Deutsche Bank. I think they're also massively trying, to build on sustainable finance and to put on a new dress. And they're really, really trying very, very hard. Look at the automotive companies. Things like Mercedes and BMW trying to bring out new electric cars and trying to copy Tesla, but Tesla is so much on top of everyone's mind with being, the brand without even doing any marketing, and so being top of mind here and having the best brand and the trustworthy and most transparent brand and products, I think will be the way to go for us, and I believe it's not that easy to just copy over.
You're right. I mean, Tesla doesn't, they just release Elon on Twitter, right? And that does the marketing. I love your answer. I love your answer. It's very confident and convincing for me. So thank you for that. And I think it's shameless plug time. So let's give a little bit of an introduction to what I'm about to show. And if you could correct me if I'm wrong, is this directly connected to the Tomorrow Zero plan that is available across the Tomorrow plans? Or is this something that's not dependent on that? Whilst I'll share the screen, if you could give us a little intro.
Yeah, sure.
There we go. So what is that? The first wooden card? Is that what I'm seeing?
Yeah. So I think I just wanted to bring a small or show maybe as a small example here of how you can differentiate also as a financial player, right? So first of all, even if it's just small things in the past, the cards typically have been in landscape. All cards, they're a landscape, right? So when we started approximately 2 years ago with our first account, we were one of the first players to actually bring a portrait layer, portrait format of a card. Then bringing color and art, I think, to banking was the other thing. And then not stopping there, but also thinking about more sustainable, different materials. And so we launched end of last year the first wooden card, and in Germany at least. We're soon gonna, I think, also offer that in other markets outside of Germany. So really thinking about a completely different type of material here. So it's something I think that shows that you can innovate also with design, with material, and that helps to differentiate, right? Because bank cards typically are very boring, right? So why not rethink that overall? We have been working very hard on the project. It wasn't that easy to get the wood in the right material, etc., so that it's stable enough, so it doesn't get stuck in the ATM machine, doesn't come out again, right? And on the right hand side, I think you see a screenshot of our app, and if you look closer, I think it's very hard to see on the small screen, but yeah, you can see, for example, that on the in the transaction description, you can see on the bio company transaction here, on the Lufthansa transaction here, that there are some CO2 values associated here, which just gives you this example of how you can enrich transaction information with footprinting data. Of course, when you go on the detailed transaction, we would give you some context on how this is being calculated and why, etc. And yeah.
So just out of curiosity, did you have to figure out the manufacturing process yourself from A to Z, or you just mentioned that it's difficult, but I imagine that wasn't the only issue.
Yeah, I think we were talking to various card producers out there, and they're also involved with traditional banks, so they're used to their process. So telling them about different materials for them was, go away. We don't have time for this. And coming there as a small fintech, not having the biggest traction maybe to start with, it was in our early days. And why should we do that? Yeah, and then I think what was very cool, we teamed up with Visa, who greatly supported us in that process. Bringing in some negotiation power in there and talking, maybe then finding the right card producer, and then going into a testing format, so it's like a beta testing. Yeah. So you do the first cards, they don't work, they break, and then iterating that and throwing them into water, seeing what happens, and then bringing the first 100 users on board and testing it with the users and gaining feedback, and really, really, really awesome and experience. And it took us a year basically to get the product right and the material right and the printing right. And because one of the problems when we first started, the ink didn't stick to the wood, and it peeled off, and it was terrible. So couldn't read your card number anymore. But getting it right took us a year, trial and error. Yeah.
I mean, I'm sad to say, because I've obviously tried to register, but tomorrow isn't in Poland yet. So whilst I'm impatiently waiting, unless I'm wrong, unless I made a mistake, but it said that if this region isn't available, then I can't open it up.
Yeah, we're gonna open it very soon, I guess, to other European countries. We're in planning that already for this year. We're definitely gonna open our doors beyond Germany. We just wanted to focus on one market first, get the product right, and then open up. Yeah.
All right, so we're hitting the 40th minute mark, so it makes sense for us to wrap up. So my shameless plug is for everybody who's watching this. COVID, difficult times. Perhaps you're considering a job change, or a job change is being forced on you by your previous employer. Make sure to actually check out Netguru's job posts. We will be posting a link in the comments. There are almost 60 positions from like 7 or 8 departments that are waiting for your application. We're waiting to welcome you. We onboard really fast. So if you want to join a B Corp, a cool company that has cool friends like Inas and does cool things like Disruption Talks, check out the comments or just Google Netguru Careers. So Inas, thank you so much for today. And like Ines mentioned, if you want to have a chat more about tomorrow, more about sustainable banking, just hit him up on LinkedIn.
Thank you very much, Philip. It was nice talking to you. And yeah, wish you all a nice evening.
Thank you so much. Pleasure is mine. Bye-bye.
Bye.